Naruto pulling up during the Pain invasion to defeat Pain was one of the best moments in all of Shippuden. But what if Naruto couldn't get there in time? What if instead the Hidden Leaf Village had to rely on someone else? And what if that someone else was Sasuke Uchiha? And Sasuke actually decided that his new mission was to defend the Hidden Leaf Village from the Akatsuki. Could Sasuke stand up to the leader of the Akatsuki and repel this enemy away? Or would he be defeated along with a lot of the other shinobi in the Hidden Leaf Village? Well, that's why today we're talking, could MS Sasuke defeat Pain? But before we get into anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Alright, so first off, we are going to go with the version of Sasuke that fought at the 5 Kage Summit and also fought against Danzo. This is considered to be the equivalent version of Sasuke to Sage Mode Naruto. And Sasuke is also going to get the benefit of all the information that Naruto had in the battle against Pain through Lady Katsuyu. So this means he is going to be aware of essentially every single one of Pain's abilities. And he's also going to be aware that their vision is all linked. This is all going to be incredibly valuable information for Sasuke in this battle. Now, that being said, the battle is going to unfold in a very different fashion. Mainly because, unlike Naruto, Sasuke doesn't have a mass amount of summons. He has Aoda, his snake summoning, and then he has his hawk. By this point in time, Manda had already been killed. So Sasuke realistically only has 2 summons that he can utilize in this battle. And unlike Naruto, he would actually have to summon these by himself, meaning he couldn't make them arrive there at the same exact time, considering the fact that they are 2 different summoning animals. So it would take 2 different summonings to make both of them arrive. And again, unlike Naruto, Sasuke would have to use up some of his chakra. However, in the spirit of fairness, I am going to allow Sasuke to arrive on Aoda. However, that being said, just Aoda is not going to be enough to help keep the animal path at a stalemate like all of Naruto's summonings were able to do. Naruto literally had the Chief Toad. He had Mr. Gamakin. He had Gamahiro, all there ready to take on all of the different summonings that the animal path kept on summoning. So this right away is going to put Sasuke at an extreme disadvantage. Now, the benefit that Sasuke is going to have is that Sasuke realistically doesn't have a time limit. You see, he was able to battle against the 5 Kage, and then he was able to battle against Danzo. And yes, he did have his chakra replenished. However, he didn't start going truly blind until the end of his battle against Danzo. And even then, he was able to go up against some of the members of Team 7, that being Kakashi and Naruto. And although he was very close to going blind during that altercation, it still shows that he was completely fine during his battle with Danzo. So I feel like there would realistically be no time limit for Sasuke in this scenario. But that being said, he is going to be a little bit more limited by his amount of chakra that he can use. Naruto just inherently has more chakra than Sasuke. And considering the fact that Naruto had the ability to use Sage Jutsu, but also the ability to summon a clone that could also replenish his Sage Jutsu, it stands to reason that Sasuke would have to battle Pain in a much different fashion. Now, he would be going up against all of the paths of Pain at the same exact time, similar to how Naruto had to battle all of them at once. Now, his one advantage, similar to with Naruto, is that the Deva path would be recharging his abilities. So at the beginning of the fight, the Deva path is essentially doing nothing, and it's going to be incredibly beneficial because this is by far and away the strongest Pain, and absolutely the most troublesome Pain. Even Lord Fukasaku himself acknowledged that fact. So as this fight unfolds, I feel like Sasuke would very quickly try to take out the animal path because he would realize that the more amount of enemies that he has to go against, the more disadvantageous his situation would become. So his first priority would be to take out the animal path, and I feel like he could do this relatively easily. Now, in my opinion, I feel like he would just simply do this with his Chidori. He would get up close and personal and ensure that he would be able to take out the animal path relatively quickly. However, he would probably notice pretty early on that the animal path might get revived, and this would actually happen if the Naraka path got a hold of the animal path. However, like I mentioned a little bit earlier on, Sasuke is going to have all of the information about Pain and Pain's abilities. So he knows what almost every single one of the individual Pains can do and their abilities. So it stands to reason that he would have at least some knowledge about what the Naraka path could do. So I feel like after he takes down the animal path, his next target would absolutely be the Naraka path to ensure that none of these enemies could be revived. And in my opinion, the Naraka path is probably one of the weaker versions of the 6 paths of Pain. They don't really have any type of special attack. Their only real ability is for interrogation and also reviving other paths of Pain. Now, yes, they could still utilize Taijutsu. However, it stands to reason that their ability in Taijutsu would be much lower than what Sasuke can achieve. So I feel like Sasuke would devise a strategy in which Aoda, as long long as he is still in this fight, would distract some of the other paths of pain while Sasuke takes on the Naraka path. And considering the fact that the Naraka path realistically has no counters or defense against Sasuke and his myriad of different jutsu, not to mention his mastery of Kenjutsu, it stands to reason that Sasuke could probably take out the Naraka path pretty easily. And once he does this, this would absolutely swing the tide of battle, because now none of the paths of pain can be revived. However, he is still going to have two very troublesome paths of pain to deal with. One being the Predator path, the one that can absorb all ninjutsu, but the other still being the Deva path. Now, another thing we have to note is, as much as I love Naruto as a character, he and Sasuke are very different. Naruto was getting real-time information as he was progressing throughout the fight. However, in my opinion, if this was Sasuke, he would be asking a lot more questions of Lady Katsuyu and also analyzing the situation a lot more than Naruto did. And again, this is as someone who has Naruto as their favorite character, but I can acknowledge that if we're talking about battle IQ and analytical skills, Sasuke is definitely above Naruto when it comes to that. So I feel like Sasuke, unlike Naruto, would actually realize that the Predator path is the one that can absorb ninjutsu. So it stands to reason that Sasuke wouldn't fire an attack against the Predator path like Naruto did and then find out what their ability is after it gets absorbed. However, the four remaining paths of pain would absolutely not just remain on the defensive throughout this battle. And although I could say that the Asura path got destroyed by Sasuke when he showed up, similar to how Naruto took out that path of pain at the very beginning, I feel like it makes it a little bit more interesting if Sasuke has to deal with that path of pain as well. They have a myriad of different attacks, most of them being long-range attacks. However, Sasuke has a direct counter to most of these attacks, and that counter is his Susanoo. And his Susanoo is able to protect him from a lot of incredibly powerful attacks. We saw Itachi literally block Kirin with his Susanoo, and considering the fact that this version of Sasuke would be able to use a version of the Susanoo that is about equal to the version of the Susanoo that Itachi used in his battle against Sasuke, it stands to reason that Sasuke's Susanoo would be just as durable as Itachi's was in that moment. And in my opinion, there's absolutely no way that the Asura path has any type of attack that even comes close to the attack power of Kirin. So it does stand to reason that Sasuke would be able to defend against all of these different attacks from the Asura path. However, what he would not be able to defend against is the Deva path utilizing his jutsu. Because we saw in Sasuke's battle against Danzo that even when Sasuke had his Susanoo activated, Danzo was able to utilize just wind-style ninjutsu alongside his summoning's wind-style ninjutsu to suck Sasuke in. So it would stand to reason that the Deva path, who in my opinion has a much stronger push and pull ability than the combination of Danzo with his summoning, that they would be able to move Sasuke around this battlefield relatively easily. And this would put Sasuke at a pretty big disadvantage. The other thing that is going to go against Sasuke in this fight is that the six paths of pain absolutely want to kill Sasuke. They have no reason to go easy on Sasuke at all. Pain had a reason to not kill Naruto. He was a Jinchuriki and he was their ultimate target. However, in this scenario, Sasuke obviously isn't a Jinchuriki, so there is no reason for any of the paths of pain to pull any of their punches at all. They are going for the kill. Now, that being said, killing Sasuke wouldn't be that easy of a task. This is a version of Sasuke, keep in mind, that was able to battle against multiple Kage and was able to go up against Danzo and was able to kill him. And not only that, he was able to deduce, but he was able to deduce what jutsu Danzo was using and also how to counter it. And he was able to do this in the midst of battle. This goes into Sasuke's battle IQ. Now, as this fight progresses, it would become very clear to Sasuke that there are two paths of pain that he is going to need to take out if he has a chance. And those two paths of pain would be the Predator path that can negate all of his ninjutsu, but also the Deva path. However, at this point in time, he wouldn't be able to target the Deva path. He is just too strong for Sasuke to take out, especially with all of the other paths of pain right there to back up the Deva path. So his next target would become the Predator path. And considering the fact that Sasuke is a master in Kenjutsu, it would stand to reason that he could actually take down the Predator path pretty easily. The only difficulty here would be trying to separate the Predator path from all of the other paths of pain. Now, I feel like the easiest way for him to do this would be to utilize a combination of Amaterasu with Kagatsuchi. This was able to form a barrier around his Susanoo that the Raikage was only able to pierce through when he decided to sacrifice his arm. So if Sasuke hypothetically made some type of small barrier either with his Susanoo, with the Amaterasu surrounding his Susanoo, it stands to reason that the other paths of pain would essentially be powerless to get through this wall of flames. However, the reason I feel like that might not not work is the Predapath could probably absorb not only the Amaterasu, but he might be able to absorb the Susanoo. Now, it's never really been shown whether or not a Susanoo can be absorbed or not. I feel like it does stand to reason that a Susanoo could be absorbed, considering the fact that it is just a giant mass of chakra. So I feel like Sasuke in this moment would need to spread out Amaterasu around the battlefield that is far enough away from the Predapath to ensure that they cannot absorb that jutsu. However, close enough to ensure that he creates a suitable barrier for him to go one-on-one with the Predapath. However, even with this being the case, he wouldn't have a lot of time to take out the Predapath, so he would have to do this relatively quickly. But luckily for him, the Predapath also isn't amazing at taijutsu. The sixth path of pain that is definitely the best when it comes to taijutsu is absolutely the Deva path, as we saw him go toe-to-toe with Sage Mode Naruto even when he was utilizing Frog Kumite. So after this fight against the Predapath, Sasuke would absolutely be victorious, and then he would only have 3 paths of pain remaining, that being the Deva path, the human path, and the Asura path. And in my opinion, the next easiest one for him to go after would absolutely be the human path, as their only real ability is to rip someone's soul out of their body, and this is mainly used as an interrogation tactic. Now, yes, obviously, if the human path got a hold of Sasuke and got a hold of his soul, this fight would absolutely be over, and Sasuke would have no chance, as if your soul gets ripped out of your body, you obviously die. However, considering the fact that Sasuke does have the capability to use his Susanoo, it stands to reason that he could probably ensure that the human path is not able to get their hands on Sasuke. And considering the fact that Sasuke has a myriad of different ranged attacks, I feel like it is pretty possible that he would be able to take out the human path relatively easily as well. And one of the jutsu that I feel like he could use with great success against the human path would be Kirin, because keep in mind, earlier in this fight, he would have utilized Amaterasu to help create a barrier to take out the Predapath. However, considering the fact that Sasuke has been noted to have an incredibly high battle IQ, he probably would have utilized that barrier of Amaterasu not just to ensure he could go one-on-one with the Predapath, but also to heat up the surrounding atmosphere to help create a thundercloud. That way he can direct Kirin, which is literally a light speed attack, and once he does this, the human path would be taken out of commission. So now the only 2 paths of pain that are remaining in this fight would be the Asura path and the Deva path. However, this is where the battle becomes way more difficult, because the Deva path would absolutely see Sasuke as the biggest threat they've ever faced, considering the fact that before this, the biggest threat was Jiraiya, and Jiraiya was only able to defeat 3 out of the 6 paths of pain at once. And yes, I know he technically defeated another one after they all got revived, but still, in total, when he was fighting multiple at once, he was able to defeat 3 of them. So the furthest that pain has ever been pushed would be in this battle against Sasuke, and this would make the Deva path become the main component of this battle. And once this happens, the fight would get even more difficult for Sasuke, as he realistically has no counter for the push and pull ability of the Deva path. Another thing that Sasuke absolutely has no counter for is Chubaku Tensei, his planetary devastation. This is something that required Naruto utilizing the power of Kurama, and not just the power of Kurama, but 8 out of the 9 tails of Kurama, and only then was he able to break out of this incredible jutsu. So it stands to reason, if the Deva path were able to trap Sasuke in this jutsu, that Sasuke would have absolutely no chance of breaking out of this, which would lead to his ultimate defeat. However, I will say there is also a way that Sasuke can still win this fight, and that is if he starts to target the Deva path and pretty much forgets about the Asura path, and his way to do this would be with his Susanoo. We've seen that his Susanoo can fire multiple arrows at once. However, the clear distinction here is that unlike in his battle against Naruto at the Final Valley, he can't fire a ton of them in succession. It takes a lot out of him, number one, but it also is going to damage his eyes significantly. But a very key thing to note is that he can fire them within an interval of 5 seconds. And this is very key because if you remember correctly, the Deva path can only repel all attacks in intervals of 5 seconds. And this would become very clear to Sasuke over the course of this battle. So I think it does stand to reason that Sasuke might actually be able to land an attack against the Deva path, especially if he utilizes his different versions of his Susanoo arrows. And he might even be able to utilize utilize a version of Amaterasu. If 2 of his Susanoo arrows fail, he might be able to take out the Deva path with Amaterasu. Now, if Amaterasu lands on Pain, he would have to utilize Kagatsuchi to ensure most of Pain burns up almost immediately, because there is also a chance that if Pain survives long enough for that 5-second interval to replenish, he could just repel off all of the Amaterasu that is already on him. And although he would be significantly damaged by this attack, Sasuke might have to land this attack of Amaterasu multiple times to take the Deva path down. And considering the fact that Sasuke would be very low on chakra by this point, and his eyes might even start to be giving out, I think it stands to reason that Sasuke would absolutely just utilize Amaterasu in combination with Kagatsuchi after he fires his Susanoo arrows to ensure that he takes out the Deva path. And this would leave only the Asura path remaining. And in my opinion, this one is probably going to be relatively easy for Sasuke to take down. You can name pretty much any of the jutsu that Sasuke can use, and they would be able to take out the Asura path. Their only real advantage is their myriad of different attacks, their different missile attacks, and the different weapons that they can bring out. However, considering the fact that Sasuke would still be able to utilize his Susanoo in these moments, it does stand to reason that he could still defend against all of these attacks from the Asura path, and then this would ultimately lead to his victory. However, how many times out of 10 could he realistically do this? Although I laid out a very clear scenario for Sasuke to win, I feel like a lot of these things have to happen a certain way in order for Sasuke to truly win this battle. So if I had to give it a number out of 10, I feel like Sasuke probably wins this fight 4 out of 10 times, meaning that Sasuke ultimately going up against the 6 paths of pain probably wouldn't win in most cases, which means him showing up to protect the Hidden Leaf Village probably wouldn't be enough to get the job done. So he, unlike Naruto, would end up failing in that moment. However, let's just say Sasuke did actually defeat all of those 6 paths of pain like I laid out in this video, and then somehow was able to find Konan and Nagato. Things would play out extremely different than how they played out with Naruto. You see, Naruto had absolutely no interest in battling against Konan or Nagato, and Nagato knew this. This is why Nagato literally said to Konan that she should stop, and he wanted to talk to Naruto. Even after firing an attack against Naruto, once Naruto negated that attack, Nagato stood and chatted with Naruto. None of this would happen in a fight with Sasuke. Sasuke would be there to kill both of them, and this would lead to a much different conclusion for the Hidden Leaf Village. You see, do I believe that Sasuke could take out Konan in this moment? Yes, absolutely. Sasuke's kit is pretty much a direct counter to Konan. Her greatest weakness is fire, and considering the fact that Sasuke is an Uchiha who excels at fire style ninjutsu, not to mention the fact that he has the capability to utilize Amaterasu and Kagatsuchi, it stands to reason that he could take out Konan relatively easily. Now, as for Nagato, I believe him going up against Nagato would be pretty easy as well, as this is a very weakened version of Nagato who isn't even able to move. He is stationary. That is a large reason why he uses the 6 paths of pain. So this would lead to Sasuke ultimately killing Nagato. However, if you will remember correctly, Naruto didn't kill Nagato. Instead, Naruto convinced Nagato to change his mind, which led to a very different conclusion. And that very different conclusion was everyone in the Hidden Leaf Village that had been killed during Pain's assault was revived and brought back to life. People like Kakashi. So in this scenario, Kakashi would remain dead. And although the Hidden Leaf Village would enjoy a victory in this moment, the ramifications of this would be drastic as the story progresses. Not having Kakashi and also having the Hidden Leaf Village be in such a weakened state would drastically handicap them when it comes to the 4th Great Ninja War. So ultimately, as much as it would be awesome to have Sasuke decide to protect the Hidden Leaf Village and be able to repel Pain, his ideology would fundamentally cripple Konoha moving forward. And this highlights the biggest difference between Naruto and Sasuke. Naruto's ability to connect with people and ultimately forgive people. But even beyond that, his ability to truly change the hearts of others. This is something that Sasuke not only doesn't possess, but he realistically doesn't care about possessing. So even if the Hidden Leaf Village were to enjoy a victory against Pain thanks to Sasuke, I feel like things down the line would end up being much worse. But I'm interested to hear from all of you. Do you think Sasuke could defeat Pain? And if Sasuke defeated Pain, what do you think the ramifications down the line could be if a lot of those shinobi didn't get brought back to life? Let me know in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And I'll see all of you in the next video. Goodbye.